The OPHANIM. The OPHANIM may be the strangest angels in the Bible. OPHANIM is the ancient Hebrew word for wheels. The singular is OPHANIM. Of particular interest are the wheels of the throne of God, mentioned in Ezekiel's vision. OPHANIM are mentioned in Ezekiel 1:15 through 21. The Bible is brimming with incredible imagery, and God gives us a look into a realm to which human eyes rarely have access through His holy word. We are never disappointed when we enter Scripture, eager to learn more about God, His methods, and His intentions. The mysteries of the universe, the heavens, and spiritual creatures are revealed in the pages of the Bible so that we can better understand Him. The OPHANIM reveal our God as King and affirm the sovereignty of His reign. Ezekiel has been in exile for 5 years when God appeared to him by a river in Sheba, which is now in the Middle East. God used this encounter to start Ezekiel's ministry as a prophet by showing him an astounding vision. It is easier to define the OPHANIM depicted in Ezekiel's vision after considering the entirety of the revelation. God chooses to open the heavens in front of Ezekiel's temporal eyes. Ezekiel witnesses a foreboding cloud of lightning and flame coming from the direction of the north. Within the cloud, 4 lighted beings shine brightly. Although the beings appear as humans, they are not human in any way. Each possesses 4 different faces: 1 human face, 1 lion face, 1 ox face, and 1 eagle face. The prophet doesn't record these creatures by name in Ezekiel 1, where the recounting of his vision begins. But by chapter 10, they're identified as cherubim. Ezekiel 1:15-21. Now as I looked at the living beings, behold, there was 1 wheel on the ground beside the living beings, for each of the 4 of them. The appearance of the wheels and their workmanship was like sparkling topaz, and all 4 of them had the same form, their appearance and workmanship being as if 1 wheel were within another. Whenever they moved in any of their 4 directions without turning as they moved. And for their rims, they were high and awesome, and the rims of all 4 of them were covered with eyes all around. Whenever the living beings moved, the wheels moved with them, and whenever the living being rose from the earth, the wheels rose also. Wherever the spirit was about to go, they would go in that direction, and the wheels rose just as they did, for the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. Whenever those went, they went, and whenever those stopped, they stopped. And whenever those rose from the earth, the wheels rose just as they did, for the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. What Ezekiel saw or described in this passage is difficult to visualize in its entirety. It is presumably an image of a magnificent chariot with 4 wheels that is being the throne of God. The scene gives the impression of continuous motion and activity, not only on the part of the living beings themselves, but also on the part of the throne that God sits on. The sense seems to be that the wheels and their workings could be moved in any direction, but there was no sense of chaos or disorder to their movements. A popular Bible commentator stated about this, like a ball bearing, they could move in any direction without any steering mechanism. As for their rims, they were so high they were awesome, and their rims were full of eyes. Again, it's difficult to imagine in one's mind exactly what Ezekiel saw or stated in this passage. The description of full of eyes was how John described the cherubim themselves. The sense is of excellent knowledge and intelligence. They are not dead metal. Their livingness is shown by their eyes with which they can see the way, and by their life link with the living creatures above them. The 4 wheels and their workings moved in step with the 4 cherubim as they rotated. They were linked together in such a way that Ezekiel was able to write, "The spirits of the living creatures was in the wheels." OPHANIM are also mentioned similarly in Ezekiel 10:9-13. Ezekiel 1:18 describes eyes in reference with the wheels. Here we learn that the cherubim themselves were full of eyes all around, and this fits the later characterization of cherubim found in Revelation 4:6. The image seems bizarre to the modern reader, but one must remember that this is a visionary experience and surrealistic features may overwhelm realism. In the passages above, the throne of God is set on wheels, OPHANIM, and then pushed by 4 angels. There are wheels inside of wheels at cross angles, with the effect that the throne can move in any direction without having to turn. The angels who are powering the throne also have 4 faces, one facing each direction, so they can likewise travel in any order without turning. The angels are identified as cherubim. The OPHANIM has been a point of fascination for many, and later Jewish apocalyptic writers gave them a life of their own. The wheels themselves came to be identified as a distinct category of angel, the OPHANIM. Seraphim and cherubim are mentioned in scriptures as angels, and to this some have added the OPHANIM, also spelled OPHANIM. Ezekiel sees a crystal vault that is so awe-inspiring that the only word that comes to mind for him to use to describe it is awesome. This vault is located above the heads of the 4 cherubim and the OPHANIM. Above the vault, he sees a brilliant and glittering throne, and high above the throne, he sees what is described as the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. Ezekiel immediately falls face down after having his eyes opened to the majesty of God's splendor, and he then hears the booming voice of the Almighty, instructing him in his mission to bring the punishment of God onto Israel for their disobedience. Why do some refer to the OPHANIM as angels? There is not a single mention of the OPHANIM in the Bible being angelic creatures, but apocryphal Jewish writers branded them as a class of angel and list them in their hierarchy of angels along with seraphim and cherubim because of the OPHANIM's unique lifelikeness, their supernatural power, and their close proximity to God's throne, not to mention the multitude of eyes. Whether or not the OPHANIM are actually angelic beings or merely a divinely powered mechanism of multi-dimensional transport doesn't matter. What does matter is the OPHANIM's function in displaying God's glory to Ezekiel and every other believer who would one day read his account and gain a renewed vision of God's kingship. What do the OPHANIM reveal about God? Both in appearance and operation, the OPHANIM that appeared in Ezekiel's vision demonstrate God's absolute dominion over the entire cosmos. The omnidirectional wheels themselves serve as a constant reminder to us that the God we serve is omnipresent, meaning that he's able to be in all places at all times. As the Spirit of Lord guides the cherubim, Ezekiel 1:12, that same Spirit indwells the OPHANIM. When the creatures moved, they also moved. When the creatures stood still, they also stood still. And when the creatures rose from the ground, the wheels rose along with them, because their spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. Ezekiel 1:20. This symbolic unity of submission displays God's supreme authority and right to rule and reign, his omnipotence. And the eyes that cover the wheels and the cherubim are symbolic of God's omniscience. He is all-seeing, all-knowing. Why is it important for Christians to know about the supernatural realm? In Ephesians 6:12, we are told that our struggle is not against flesh. God desires believers to be aware of the world beyond what our temporal eyes can see, so that we, in the Lord's mighty power, can be prepared to take on whatever scheme the enemy has in store. Extremism is prevalent in today's society. On one end of the scale, there are believers who downplay the supernatural part of their faith and insist on maintaining a naturalistic worldview, which is characterized by an exclusive reliance on the truths of doctrinal teachings for day-to-day living. And on the opposite end of the spectrum are those people who are so preoccupied with the spiritual realm because of the allure it holds for them that they are of little help on earth. We must first ensure that our eyes are open to the reality of the situation. When Elisha's servant was terrified by the surrounding enemy in 2 Kings 6:16, the prophet tells the young man, "Don't be afraid."